All right, what we got laid out here is what I like to call the power cards of the deck. They are what makes the deck worth running and what makes it hum. The way you play these cards will define whether or not you have a great tournament with Dash or just a medium one, as you can squeeze every little value out of these cards to get way more than the sum of their individual parts. Starting at the top, we got Payload. Now this is a card that we really only play one of in the aggro matchups. The second one is mostly because of its 6 attack that will pop a Phantasm should you play against a Dromai. In a perfect world, we'd like more poppers, but unfortunately due to sideboard consideration, we can only restrict it to these 4, plus the red 3 throttles in the boost attack action slots. So as it stands, we got 2 payloads in the future, definitely looking to add more if Dromai does pick up. Maximum Velocity, simply the best card for rate in the deck. 2 resources for 10 attack, probably the best in the game. It does come with the restriction of needing to play 3 boost cards prior to playing the Maximum Velocity, so keep that in mind, because with 1 blue pitch, you basically have 4 resources with Tekla Foundry Heart, but if you play a single 2 resource costed boost attack, you need the remaining attacks to cost 0 in order to pay the remaining 2 resources for a Maximum Velocity. So be very cognizant of what attacks you have in your hand and what can and cannot use you can use with Maximum Velocity before you start playing your turns out. Spark Your Genius, the tutors of the deck, tutor being a term that we just go out and fetch our items. They're good to fetch Tekla Cores, Tekla Pounders, and then items such as Induction Chambers or Plasma Purifiers in the more controlling matchups. You know, a very common line that you'll see is a Spark Your Genius for a Tekla Core, drawing a card, popping your Achilles boots to gain back an action point, and then continuing the turn after you get the draw effect from Spark Your Genius. An insane value you get from it. You get a Tekla Core and the card replaces itself. Wow, what a rate, you know, getting resources for next turn as well. Tome of Findale is a card that makes kind of our deck a little bit more unique. When you play from Arsenal, it's almost an 8 damage swing because it draws you 2 cards that represents extra resources or attack value, but it also gains you life. In combination with Tekla Core, there are times when you will play a boost attack action and then play a Tome of Findale to gain 5 life because you didn't have to pitch a card. So just an insane card that's, you know, its value is way above normal rate in this game, and we really want at least 1 copy, access to 1 copy in the deck. Now, we played 2 at the Pro Tour because they were especially good in the aggro mirrors. In the new format with Guardian on the rise and aggro decks kind of tapering off a little bit, we decided to move back down to 1, but this card can easily go back up to 2 at any moment. High Octane, just a really good card to play with all your boost cards. What it says is once you boost a turn, whenever you boost in a turn, you gain 1 action point, which may not sound like a lot, but keep in mind every shot of your pistol costs 1 action point. So what this means is every time you boost, you can pay a single resource for 2 damage. So High Octanes, Spark Your Geniuses, Tekla Cores, Tome of Findales, these are the cards that lead to really good turns, and of course Maximum Velocity. So there you have it. These are the payoffs of the deck. Let's move into the next portion. Laid out in front of us, we have the D-Reacts and the Induction Chamber and Plasma Purifier, which are our item pistol package that we play against the slower Guardian decks. This is probably what I like to think of as the most fun aspect of the deck, because you get to play a very slow, very controlling, very tempo-oriented game. So starting off, we have Sink Belows here. Everybody's familiar with this card. A great rate, 0 for 4 block. And it also allows you to fix your hand. So if you have 1 too many reds in it, you can put Tuck a Red to the bottom of your deck, a red line card, in order to draw blue in order to load your items. Now, Unmovable, another staple of most Dash decks. A really good rate, 3 resources for 8 defense when it comes out of the arsenal, 7 if it's played from hand, but very crucial in blocking crush effects, dominated effects such as Oakenhold, in order to protect your hand, protect your life total, and protect your resources. Now, what makes my list a little bit special is I'm playing copies of Reinforce the Line, and it may seem a little strange to you. In maybe more traditional lists, they would be Fate for Scenes, but going forward, I have really enjoyed Reinforce the Line due to some of the trends in the metagame. One being that Guardian decks especially love to be playing Command and Conquer plus Pummel. It is one of the most potent threats they have against you, and there's oftentimes, if you go up to 9 defense reactions, you're going to be stuck with 1 or 2 or more defense reactions and not be able to fully block it out. Reinforce the line is an instant, so you can easily just block a Command and Conquer with 2 attack actions, which is block 6, and absolutely blow out a pummel with a Reinforce the line. Furthermore, it gets around Dominate when you're only blocking from hand, and that's something that not even Fate Foreseen or Sink Below can offer. For example, if you draw a hand of 3 attack actions and a Sink Below, and your opponent comes at you with a Dominated Glacial or an Oakenold, you can only still play a single Sink Below from hand, meaning it's a block for 4. But with Reinforce the Line, because it is an instant and not a defense reaction, you can block with an attack action and still play the Reinforce the Line for an additional block 4. So you're functionally blocking 7 from hand, allowing you to kind of almost cheat the Dominate mechanic and get around it. A very underrepresented card that I think will change as people try and test this card out more and realize the power it has. Now finally, we got the items here. Because we are not playing Talishar, we are always starting with 1 Induction Chamber. The exception to that is if you're playing against Oldhim. If you're playing against Oldhim, I am actually starting Plasma Purifier. Now the logic there being, if you attack with a pistol and an Induction Chamber, reload, and shoot it again, you are getting 4 damage for 3 resources. 1 counter from the Induction Chamber, 2 counters to the 2 pistol shots. Now your opponent can block it with a single blue card. So for example, they can pitch a blue to Crown of Seeds, block with Ram's Head, and then again, once you break the combat chain, they can block again with Ram's Head, paying the extra resource to block too. So you actually get no damage. So in that matchup, I like to start Purifier. I actually like to get the second Purifier second, go into my Induction Chamber, finish with a Purifier, and then finally the last Induction Chamber. So against Oldhim specifically, the order I like to do is Purifier, Purifier, Chamber, Purifier, Chamber. And I hope that makes sense to everybody. But everywhere else, we're starting Induction Chamber, even in the aggro matchups. Very efficient way of both utilizing extra resources, right? If you think about when you play aggro decks like Dash or Viscerai, or not Dash, Viscerai, Briar, excuse me. If you have redundant resources left over the end of the turn, it is lost to forever into the Aether, never to be seen again. But with Dash, you have almost perfect resource efficiency every turn, where you can sink redundant resources into your items for added damage in future turns. So one of the strongest aspects of the deck, and something that will make or break how well you do with Dash, it will be how you utilize your extra resources into these items. What I have laid out here is what I like to call the meat and potatoes of the deck. These are the core boost attack action cards in the deck. They are your solid game plan that you will be using every game, and they encompass the vast majority. Now starting at the reds, we have what I like to call the power cards of the boost attack actions. That is your red throttle, your red zipper hit, and your red 0 to 60s. These cards usually trade up and right, so unless your back's against the wall or you really need to block out a big guardian attack, I advise trading these for their attack value rather than their block value, because these cards will always trade up in terms of damage to block ratio in various turn cycles. The rest of the reds, we plan because we need an aggro plan. Combustible Courier is a card that I am less fond of than I would say the general population is. It is a 2 resources, 4 attack card that gets an on-hit effect. If it hits, your next attack that you boost will get +3. Although that is good, it comes at the condition of being easily blockable. So, your opponent, it's all face up, they have the choice, they have armor. So I only like 2 of these cards, and I even board them out in a lot of matchups that I am a more defensive player, not taking an aggressive role. Our yellows are largely comprised of the efficient reds. Less good for attacking because they are yellows, but they do pitch for 2 in a pinch, and you can still play them. You're not excited to play these cards, but they're not the worst in the world, and they do kind of load the pistol and the chamber if needed. Now, throttles in blues, zipper heads in blues, and 0 to 60s in blues are most likely going to be the only ones you ever attack with. By and large, though, your blues are largely played for their pitch value and not actually their face value. So by and large, a lot of the blues end up being block 3s that end up pitching for 3 resources, in order to load up your pistols or facilitate your other boost action cards in your deck. Now that we're familiar with the deck, let's talk a little bit about sideboarding. So against aggro decks, this is our race package. Now keep in mind, remember there were 45 boost attack action cards in the deck. Here we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 cards. So these will be the additional 15 cards that add to the deck. You start with the induction chamber in play. And from here, our game plan is really just to really play on the back of these maximum velocities, Turbo Findel, and high octane turns. So into our aggro matchups, our game plan fully revolves around it. Until you get to these turn cycles, you want to be blocking with your redundant cards and getting in the most efficient damage to block ratio that you can possibly think of at that time. So it is not a simple aggro deck, kind of like you may see some of the Rune Blades that will always almost say no block or only ever block with a card that they don't need. Right? If you have extra resources into the pistol and you don't need a yellow, you should be blocking with it, as it won't net you more damage by attacking with it. So really a turn-by-turn game, and a very high power level in this deck too. It can outrace almost any deck, and with Induction Chamber you don't have to worry about fatiguing, because you can always go into this kind of pistol game plan towards the end game, stripping 2 cards out of them if they're 2 life or lower. So this is the sideboard package that we bring in against aggressive decks, such as Runeblade, Viserai, Phi, and so forth. What we got laid out here in front of me is what I like to call the defensive package, how I like to sideboard against Guardian. I like to bring in all my pistol utility items. I do keep the Tekla Pounder in there just for an added blue, and sometimes you do end up getting it for a little bit of boost value should you want to pivot to that game plan. But by and large, this is 24 cards you are bringing in, meaning if you add it to the 45 cards earlier in our boost attack actions, that leaves us with 69 cards, meaning we need 9 cuts. For the cuts, I like to cut what I like to call the inefficient red cards, so the combustible carriers, the T-bones, and the high-speed impact reds. Now, because we are missing out on one more inefficient red card, I then like to cut the first yellow throttle from the deck. This will reduce our overall red line count because we are adding extra red lines in with the induction chambers, plasma purifiers, sink blows, and defense reactions. So we have to remove some of the red lines from the deck. High Octane's a bit controversial. I see that some people like to cut it. I like to play it just because of the draw effect. Even if you don't get any additional value, it is still a free way to draw a card from your deck and try and find an item 1 turn faster than you may have found it otherwise. So I like to keep the High Octanes. They still block for 3, better than any other of these attack actions that don't really do too much against Guardian. So this is how I board against the Guardian package. Finally, against Roma, I like to sideboard a little specially. Because of the nature of them having a bunch of Phantasm, you want to play all your poppers. So we are bringing in the maximum velocities and payload, but they are also very capable of fatiguing you. So you must also bring in the pistol package. Ideally, if you ever get to a chamber plus 2 purifiers, that's probably enough. You don't really need to go hunting for the full complete package here. But we do want redundancy in case we do end up boosting and end up exiling an item or banishing an item. So the way I like to board is to bring in these cards you see on the mat in front of you, and I like to take out the 3 red T-bones and the 2 red high-speed impacts. Just kind of keeping it simple, having an efficient game plan of dealing damage when I can, killing dragons and popping dragons when I can, but ultimately trying to kill them before they snowball out of control with dragons and permanents. All right, I want to thank everybody for joining me. That sums up my Dash deck tech video. If you are a person that likes mid-range kind of decks that can both play aggressively and defensively, depending on what your opponent's playstyle dictates, Dash is the hero right up your alley. It requires an incredible amount of skill, an incredible amount of time to fully learn Dash. I am still doing so myself, but I will say she is probably one of the most fun heroes in the game, and one that will scale with your knowledge. So the better you get, the better the deck will perform. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and thank you LSS for letting me be a part of this awesome series. Take care and good luck to Nationals for everybody watching.